If you've been dealing with back pain, then chances are the deadlift is one of the lifts that you've probably been struggling with the most. The thought of pulling a heavy bar off the ground probably terrifies you. Doctors and other physical therapists have probably told you to just stop deadlifting, which you don't want to do, but you also don't know how to confidently get out of pain and back to lifting the way that you want to without just having to give up the lifts that are causing issues like the deadlift. And the truth is, completely avoiding deadlifts when you are dealing with back pain rarely is the answer. So many of the lifters that I've worked with have gone to other doctors or physical therapists who just told them to stop lifting, and because that's what they were told and it made sense to them, that's what they did. So they would stop deadlifting for several weeks or several months or maybe even years. And because of that, their backs would often feel a little bit better from not doing the movements that aggravate it and doing some of the rehab work that their physical therapist or other healthcare provider told them to do. And after a while, after feeling good and kind of making some progress, they think that they're ready to get back to deadlifting. They try to pick up the bar again. And usually what happens is the pain just comes right back because avoiding deadlifting and doing low-level rehab drills doesn't actually build up your back enough to handle the heavy deadlifting that you want to be doing. So when you try to deadlift again, it's just way more than what your back can tolerate and it flares up right again, which is super frustrating. Instead, the best answer is to usually find ways to modify your deadlift training so you can still train the lift with minimal to no pain and progress that over time as your back gets better and as you build up your strength. And that's exactly what we did with my client, Mikhail. He was dealing with back pain for nearly a year that was making it almost impossible to deadlift the way that he wanted to. He tried just avoiding the movement for a while and doing some basic core stability drills and all this sort of stuff, and while he saw a little bit of progress in the beginning, his back pain would just come right back every time he tried to load up a heavy bar and actually deadlift again. When we started working together, we actually put together a plan that had modified deadlift training in it, as well as individualized rehab work, and that progressed over time, and now he's actually back to deadlifting the way that he wants, and he just hit a 535-pound rack pull without any back pain whatsoever. So in this video, I'm going to show you 3 of my favorite ways to modify the deadlift so you can keep on training it as you rehab and solve your back pain. Before we do that though, we need to talk briefly about pain during training. When I'm working with my clients, I tell them that the goal isn't necessarily to have zero pain at all times throughout their lifting and rehab work. If that's the case, then we're probably just doing too little to actually make the type of progress we want going forward and usually end up spinning your wheels and not getting the results that you want. Instead, allowing a little bit of pain during training or rehab work is totally fine. And what we do is we use a bit of a traffic light system. Pain of 1 to 3 or 1 to 4 out of 10 is what we consider our green light. That is a level of pain that we are completely fine continuing to train through. You don't have to modify further or pull back from there. The goal is to find some of these modifications for deadlifts that we're going to cover to train that movement pattern with this level of pain and then progress as it gets better. Pain of 5 or 6 out of 10 is what we consider our yellow light. It doesn't mean that we immediately pull back, nor does it mean that we immediately just continue pushing through. It basically depends how long that pain or how long that flare-up lasts for. I tell my clients that a 5 or 6 out of 10 pain that goes away right away or very quickly is okay to keep training through as long as they're not worried about it, but we also wouldn't progress that until it does start to calm down into that green light range. However, if a certain type of deadlifting or other movement causes a 5 or 6 out of 10 pain that lasts for quite a while, like a day or more, then we would want to modify a little bit further to pull that movement back into that green light range. And pain above a 6 out of 10 is what we would consider our red light, in which case we would want to stop, reassess, and more aggressively modify the deadlift to bring that down. The first type of modified deadlift that's honestly one of my favorites to use with my clients is tempo deadlifts. The tempo is simply the speed at which you do certain parts of repetition, usually symbolized as a 3-digit number. Tempo deadlifts use slow eccentrics, slow concentrics, or pauses, or a combination of them to basically slow down each repetition, which is going to force you to use less weight on the bar for any given rep range. This helps keep the deadlift as similar to how you would normally train it as far as range of motion and variation, but because it forces you to use less weight, it's usually a lot more comfortable and causes a lot less pain. I'll often start my clients with something like a 303 tempo deadlift, where you're lifting and lowering each for 3 seconds, or a 202 tempo deadlift, where again, you're lifting or lowering each over 2 seconds. The slow concentric and slow eccentric is going to force you to limit the weight the most as far as it comes to tempo modification. From there, I'll often progress my clients to something like a 530 tempo or a 420 tempo deadlift. In this variation, you still have a pause and a slower eccentric, but because you're not limiting the speed of the concentric, you'll be able to handle slightly heavier loads, so it's a natural progression from the 303 or 202 tempo deadlifts. And then finally, I'll progress my clients to either just a slow eccentric or just a pause deadlift as the last step before they get back to regular barbell deadlifting. The next modification that's really great for lifters with back pain is using block or rack pulls. For most lifters, the initial pull off the floor is the most aggravating or most painful part of the lift for their backs. So by elevating the bar on blocks or on the rack, that cuts the range of motion and eliminates that initial pull from the floor, which can feel a lot better on their backs when they're dealing with back pain. The higher you elevate the bar, usually the easier it is on your back. So I'll often start my clients with something like an above knee rack pull, and then slowly increase the range of motion and decrease the block or rack height over time. And the third type of modification that I use a lot with my own clients is just modifying the variation of the deadlift itself. There are many ways to train the overall deadlift movement pattern as a hip hinge. You can do things like RDLs, sumo deadlifts, or even trap bar deadlifts. RDLs will naturally force you to use a lot less weight than a conventional deadlift while still hammering the hamstrings and glutes quite hard and giving you a good strength and hypertrophy stimulus. And both sumo and trap bar deadlifts usually allow lifters to have a more upright torso position and less of that forward lean, which can be a lot more comfortable on their backs. There's no right or wrong way to modify the deadlift around your back pain. You basically have to experiment a little bit and find what works best for you to reduce that pain and allow you to progress over time. If your pain isn't as severe or limiting, you can simply choose one of these modifications to implement and then see how that goes. On the other hand, if it is more severe or more limiting, then you can use a combination of these modification styles to even further modify the deadlift. For example, if your back pain is quite bad, then you can switch to something like a 303 tempo RDL through a shortened range of motion. This changes the variation, the tempo, and the range of motion, all of which come together to really limit the weight on the bar and help you train the deadlift with a lot less back pain. And if you're looking for one-on-one help to solve your own back pain and actually get back to lifting that you love, then click the link below in the description to schedule a phone consultation with me and my team.